2, 1. All right, welcome to the third episode of the Utah Stories program. Man, jam-packed episode. I have to keep recording it because it's so packed. I need to make it shorter somehow. So I've completely prepared this episode and really pared it down so that you get only the critical information that you need as a Utah citizen or as a potential person studying the law in Utah or a medical cannabis patient. So you have everything you need to understand the ins and outs of what's going to happen with medical cannabis in Utah. So with that said, this episode is all about the passage of Proposition 2. It passed. I was happy to see that. It was kind of expected. But basically, it's all going to be more about how the LDS Church is wielding their power in the medical cannabis debate in Utah. So we're going to delve into the impact that medical cannabis can have on the opioid epidemic in Utah, a very important factor that I think a lot of the mainstream media is missing. So that's all coming right up. But first, I need to tell you about the Made in Utah Festival, Winter Festival Kickoff Party. So tickets just went on sale like a day ago. And what we don't want to have happen is that a lot of people are disappointed that they didn't hear about it, that they missed out, because we only have 350 tickets we're giving out. With your ticket, which is $40, you'll be able to sample amazing downtown Salt Lake City local restaurants. You'll be able to sample craft distilleries and cocktails made by them, 3 of them for your $40, and sample plates. You'll also be able to sample spa treatments. You'll be able to meet makers, all sorts of amazing Utah makers. You'll be able to support the entrepreneurial spirit and the free market in Utah. So go spend your $40, go to madeInUtahFest.com and buy your ticket there. There's a link if you go there. All right, so let's get right into it. So I want to start by playing a couple of clips for you that I think will set the stage for the discussion. So the first clip is from the Utah Patients Coalition town hall meeting from a few weeks ago. Now, I keep going through these clips because I got so much good material there that I just wanted to go through it. And this, episode's focused on church power because I think that that's something that we should focus on now. So a first clip will set the stage completely by kind of demonstrating what the sentiment of Utah patients have for the church and how they were wielding their power in this discussion. Let's listen to that now.
I just want to say as a constituent, I'm just really uncomfortable with the number of times the church has been mentioned. In what other state would we be having a discussion, a political discussion as you guys defined it, would we be considering a church?
Especially as the church.
If you were in Rome and the Vatican, if the Pope and the Vatican had an issue that they thought touched on the spiritual well-being of the people of Rome, I don't think anyone would be shocked that the Vatican or the Pope would have an opinion.
I won't talk about my medicine.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that was an example. I'll give you another. Now, if we're going to heckle, you asked me a question, I'm going to try to answer it. But if you just want to heckle it,
so
then,
Speaker Hughes went on to say that he grew up in a Catholic community. The Catholic Church was always weighing in on issues, and that we got to expect the church to be weighing in on the issues. I don't think that that's the greater issue here. I don't mind at all the church weighing in on issues. That doesn't bother me one bit. But here is what we are getting into. What I was talking about was, and I later met with Speaker Hughes, is that, obviously Salt Lake City can be compared to Vatican City. We are only second to the Catholic Church in terms of our wealth and power from the LDS Church. No, we aren't in Rome. However, it totally makes sense that they're weighing in on this, and it makes sense that they would mandate, or not mandate, but recommend, I suppose, to their leadership that they make a decision a certain way. So there's no sense in complaining about that. That's the reality of living in Utah, and I kind of like saying to people who really like to complain about our laws, you can always go live somewhere else if you don't like it. But however, and this is my big however, if the church is using their power to essentially misinform their members or misguide their members into believing things that are simply false, then that is an abuse of power. So here's another clip where I asked Speaker Hughes about a meeting, right after the meeting, about how the church and Mitt Romney were using scare tactics to steer the conversation away from facts and into the realm of untruth and fear. Let's listen to that clip now. Romney throwing a wrench in the gears, saying it's going to be at every corner market in gummy bears, and there's going to be marijuana laced brownies. I mean, he's trying to kill it. He's trying to kill the Mormon support for Proposition 2.
And he won't.
Why?
I will tell you this. This isn't in his wheelhouse. It's in ours.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
And one of the biggest reasons why I felt that we had an obligation to the citizens of the state to get involved is it is not the case that people that support this want this to be a Cheech and Chong movie as a state, okay? It is not the case that gummy bears are going to be available for every child to become, you know, high when they're back in their classes, or these. That is a false narrative. It is also a false narrative that those that might have opposed Proposition 2 as it was worded just didn't care about people. They were okay with people suffering. That wasn't true either. And so what I was worried is that we would talk past each other. These bad narratives that really weren't getting to the heart of what's going on here.
So what I appreciate about that is Speaker Hughes is calling Mitt Romney out, saying that what he was talking about was a false narrative, that tactic was not working, that was a stupid tactic to take. And then we do end up speaking past each other. It becomes a fight, us versus them, patience versus the church. Nobody wants to see a fight like that, especially if the church indeed does care about patience. So basically what's happened is that the church leadership decided that in order to really get out in front of the potential PR disaster of losing Prop 2 despite their opposition to it, they decided that they should craft their own legislation and work with the opposition. So the opposition, Utah Patience Coalition, is mostly LDS members as well, but LDS members who land on the side of truth and facts about cannabis rather than falsehood and misguided information. So they reached out. I went into the last episode about Nathan Frodsham, who was a major patient advocate. And basically, they started on talks. They started on crafting the legislation so that they could both come up with a solution they could find tolerable. So they call this legislation the compromise. And this was passed. This was been worked on for the last month and a half, well before Proposition 2 even passed. So at the same time as the town hall meeting where I was speaking with Greg Hughes, I spoke with Connor Boyack. And now Connor operates the Libertas Institute, because what I find quite fascinating about all of this is that Libertas is a libertarian think tank. They're responsible for crafting the compromise bill, and it's a little ironic that the legislation that is being considered in this compromise bill is the very least free market friendly cannabis legislation, medical cannabis legislation, that has ever been passed or considered in the history of mankind. So as a libertarian endorsing the most socialistic, communistic solution to medical cannabis in Utah is a little bit ironic. So this compromise would be legislation that seriously Vladimir Putin would be proud of, because it is legislation that pretends to appear free market friendly, but it's actually something like an oligarchy policy where the political leaders have free reign to choose winners or losers. So we basically give all the power to politicians to choose the winners and losers. Then we also create a state-controlled facility and mostly state-controlled medical cannabis pharmacies. So noticing this made me question the motives of the Libertas Institute. So my question was, what is a libertarian organization doing crafting legislation that's the least free market-friendly cannabis legislation on earth? I asked Connor Boyack this question. Here is what he had to say. You guys have been fighting for this for 5 years now, and this has kind of been your central issue. Is this something that anybody at Libertas or surrounding it has funded Libertas to get this passed, so they can enter the market and be a part of it?
Oh, no, none of our funders have any interest. Our funders are patients and caregivers. We've been asked a lot about, like, DJRI, is this your angle? You're trying to get a license? I have zero interest in any of that, even lobbying for the...
Like the good old boys club runs pretty rampant in Utah.
No, I mean, I'm a free market guy, so I want people to make money serving patients and giving them the medicine they need. I like that aspect to it, but from our vantage point, our primary interest is the criminal justice issue of not criminalizing patients for using cannabis. And so since day one, that's been our core focus. If we could even get that issue changed and not have any dispensaries and grows, like, we would be okay with that. But if we can go one step further and make sure that patients can drive down the street to get their medicine rather than to another state, all the better. But our primary core focus has always been the criminal justice issue.
So the primary core focus has been the criminal justice issue, decriminalizing medical marijuana for patients. So that part of the legislation will remain intact. I got to say, I do trust Mr. Boyack's motives. I do trust the Libertas Institute's motives. I even decided to go to their website and order a book I've been highly recommended to me, called The Law by Frederic Bastiat. French guy, lived in the 1850s. So this book actually plays a wonderful role into the legalized cannabis debate of today. So Bastiat's contention was that the law had been perverted and it was being used as a weapon of greed to allow for legalized plunder. In other words, this book is a big critique on socialism, which was spreading in Europe and France at the time. So Bastiat said that there are 3 forms of legalized plunder, which are essentially different stages of growth on the same plant. The stages of growth are 1, protectionism, where you basically say, hey, what are we going to do so we can protect everyone and keep everyone safe? What can we do to protect people? The second stage is socialism, which is essentially, hey, you know what would be even better? Is if we protect you even more by basically doing everything ourselves as a government. Let's just take over the means of production. Let's take over the market so we can really protect workers and laborers and consumers. Let's protect everyone that way. The third stage is communism, where you're saying, essentially, hey, you know what? All you people, poor people out of work because there's no more free market, hey, come work for us. This way we can share the wealth and share in everything. The problem with socialism, as Mr. Bastiat points out, is that it's legalized plunder. It robs from the free market to give incentives for people to not work. That's essentially what happens. So the LDS Church is imposing the first stage of protectionism into their compromise bill, along with lots of good chunks of the second stage. The church contends that they need to protect consumers and children. And under this guise, they told their members to vote against Prop 2 and that they would craft legal cannabis legislation that essentially wouldn't corrupt the LDS members and Utah culture and children. But Bastiat's contention, and it's a contention I share with him, is that protection is simply another form of using the law as a weapon to legalize greed, and in the LDS Church's case, to legalize and rationalize their plunder of a $400 million industry coming to Utah. I mean, that's the way it is. So I will say, with all due respect to the church and its membership, just so you know, I love Mormon people. I have Mormon friends and family. I have a lot of Mormon ancestry. So please understand, I'm not attacking the church. I'm simply attacking how they are choosing to wield their power in this issue. And so I'm holding truth to power to a religion. And if there's anything we can learn today, it's that we should never assume that a religious organization should be held above scrutiny and get a pass. We can see today a perfect example from the Catholic Church and all the scandals surrounding it. What happens when reporters decide to give churches a pass because they're simply too holy to examine. So with all love and kindness, I say the church is acting out of greed and not in the best interest of their members, nor patients, nor entrepreneurs, nor farmers, nor the free market, nor definitely the people who are suffering the most from all sorts of chronic diseases, illnesses, for which medical marijuana is a much safer, less side effect inducing alternative to what is out there. So what is really wrong with the compromise? So I'll point out the three biggest problems that I can see. Number one, the central fill, they call it. The central fill is basically the idea that there should be a giant government building full of government bureaucrats who can go over every single medical cannabis order and put their state seal of approval on it and essentially add a level of tax onto the product. So that basically gives, as Bastiat describes, a manner of weaponizing the law to ensure the state maintains a monopoly. If the state controls the distribution, then they control the entire market. This is wrong. And to all the rhinos in the Utah State Legislature, Republican in name only, if you are voting yes in this compromise, then you are voting for socialism, and you better change your party affiliation. Just change it. Admit you're a socialist. All by itself, though, this will make medical cannabis in Utah more expensive by far than the black market weed or medical cannabis from neighboring states. There's no question that's going to happen. Number two, blister packs. Blister packs are mandated for all medical cannabis flowers. So blister packs will not only add cost to medical cannabis, but they will create a huge amount of unneeded waste and garbage that we don't need in our landfills. The reason why blister packs will create an added cost is that they are actually issuing, the state's issuing an unlimited number of medical cannabis processing licenses. But to be a processor, you've got to go out and buy blister packaging machinery, which is very expensive. And then you've got to staff the blister package machinery. Instead of having one person who can just take a handful of flowers and put them in a bag and weigh them, you've got to have one person putting every single flower into a blister pack one at a time, making sure they're all the same size. That puts a ton of strain on the grower and the cultivator, because the flowers have to be relatively the same size. And it puts a ton of labor costs on the packager. It's an awful idea, which will certainly add a ton of cost to consumers. It'll affect the consumers the most. So, number three, the massive barriers to entry that ensure the rich and powerful gain the most from medical cannabis, and that the small farmers cannot succeed in this arena. So I went into this in the previous episode. Issuing only 20 licenses for medical cannabis cultivation will ensure the very, very largest players are able to dominate the market, and that the smaller cannot succeed. So as we pointed out from the Forbes article, that medical cannabis and cannabis in general is a race to the bottom. It's whoever can provide it the lowest cost. So the biggest do the best and the smallest don't succeed. But medical cannabis could be different. There could be boutique, small growers who specialize in specialized strains. It's like producing wine. It's not like producing cigarettes. We got to look at what the differences are. But by creating this limited number of licenses, they will ensure that the rich and powerful get wonderful favors from our state legislature, and our state legislature members who are choosing the winners and losers will likely get nice little kickbacks and perks. What's the big picture, though? What's the bigger picture of this? So the Republicans are now facing a blue wave in that they lost the House of Representatives to the Democrats. What I can tell you, Republicans, is that if you continue to work for the rich and the powerful, the corporate puppet masters that are basically controlling you, if you continue to rig the system on their behalf, then there will no longer be a fair and free market. Then you can expect an even bigger blue wave in 2020. But the wave will include socialist solutions like those Bernie Sanders is offering. The blue wave will roll over all over the fledgling entrepreneurs, and the message will be clear. Don't go out and build, create, grow. America isn't the land of opportunity. No, America is the land of victims. We are a victim of corporate greed and powerful lobbyists, powerful politicians only working for their corporate playmasters. And so instead of trying to start a business, let's just all steal from these evil corporations who have stolen our wealth, our individuality, and our sovereignty, and let's just divide the plunder among ourselves. I'm serious here. That is what will happen if you continue to rig the market and choose winners and losers. You're giving great fodder to the Bernie Sanders supporters. So go out and get yourself this book, The Law. It's on the Libertas Institute site for like $1. So let me just tell you one final note to you so-called small government conservatives who always vote for rigging the system. Don't start crying when Bernie Sanders socialists roll right over you in 2020 with your misguided actions. You don't work for the people. You don't work for patients. Your decisions are leading us down a path to socialism and Marxist solutions. So, well, let's take a little break with that, shall we? That was kind of getting heavy there. So I want to point out a little bit more about Utah Stories magazine. So we print and distribute 900 to 900 distribution locations, 26,000 copies every single month. I wanted to point out one brand new advertiser who's absolutely awesome. This place is called Decor to Your Door. And so in your house, if you are sick and tired of looking through your window and seeing neighbors, or your neighbors are shining lights through your windows late at night, they got those lights that come on that just, you know, you walk in front of them, they pop right on. You can go and, or you just want to beautify your house in general, go to decortoyourdoor.com and check out what they've got going on. Or you can call Decor to Your Door at 801-337-0447. And Christine, will come out and do a consultation with you and help you find the perfect fabric. She has an amazing selection of fabrics and hardware, and she will totally hook you up. And tell her you found her in Utah Stories. So with that, I want to point out one other thing. This is my letter to the editor. I wanted to read this and basically just tell you where I'm at with our content in Utah Stories and what we're all about. So Utah Stories magazine, you might be wondering, why in the heck are you still covering medical cannabis in Utah? This is like the third episode where that's really all that we've done. So the reason I started Utah Stories magazine, and I started as a website actually 10 years ago, was that I felt like getting the news in 3-minute segments and trying to understand the news and why things are the way they are from small little stories and even, 2,000 word stories in the Tribune wasn't enough. And the newspapers always did the best job at collecting the in-depth local stories and asking the questions of how and why things are the way they are. But unfortunately, newspapers have lost dozens and dozens and dozens of reporters just over the last 10 years. And so I feel like there should be another voice for local Utah where we can ask in-depth questions and help people, residents, come to better conclusions about how things are the way they are, and basically just do more in-depth local reporting. And so that's the dream and mission with Utah Stories. We have about 15 writers we can draw from, but we don't have enough financing to do many stories in depth. I would love to do more stories in depth. And how you can support us, but besides coming to the Made in Utah Festival, I will tell you more about that very soon. But in the short term, what you can do is just simply subscribe to the channel. Go to utahstories.com, subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get all the updates and information about how we grow and develop. We're basically going to be shifting our strategy, our business strategy. I mean, we've been in print for 10 years, and sometimes it feels like we're selling horse-drawn carriages like 10 years after the car has come out. And so we're moving very much into an online arena, and we are very much getting into events, newsletters, and podcasts. And I think you could enjoy all three of them if you are a liberty-minded individual and you want to maintain your sovereignty as a community, as an individual, and continue to have the ability to create your own wealth, create your own business, grow, build, create, and go and kick butt in the free market. We basically want to see the market remain free. We want to see entrepreneurs and farmers and makers all succeed in Utah, and that is our mission, and those are our values. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up this third episode. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate all your comments. Man, it was awesome to see just over the weekend. We skyrocketed in viewership. Well, not skyrocketed. I mean, we went from like 100 views of the last episode to like 600 views, and then like a few hundred views of the teaser video, and then a lot of really cool comments. Really, viewers, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I hope to see you at the Made in Utah Festival. Till then, have a great day.